let's get going. Saul out of San Diego, John Reilly out of Hawaii. What island, John? What island are you on? Oahu.
Oahu, where Honolulu is.
Very cool. Thank you, because I actually didn't know when you said Oahu, believe it or not. How familiar with Hawaii?
That's where I was born.
Dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How about you, John? Where the heck were you born?
Ossining, New York, the home of Sing Sing Prison.
Nice. I like that. I was born in the San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles.
Okay.
There you go.
Valley guy.
I'm a Valley guy. Everyone, welcome to the show, the update. Let's talk about the latest thing that's going on, the thing that's in front of everyone's eyes outside. This is not for the consumer. The consumer thinks the market's crashing. Some are like, it's done, toast, we're going into a recession, watch out. And others are like, okay, not so bad. Not that. We're talking about an update for real estate agents, for teams, for brokerages. What's that world looking like? And right now, it's all about who's keeping certain listings off of the MLS. And is Zillow going to win or are they not? Where do we start with this, John or Saul?
Well, so I'll start and then you guys can jump in. And because it's an old story. And so this is nothing new. It's just in a different kind of light right now. And so the idea goes back to, and John and I have been saying this for, 30 years probably, was that a listing is a marketing asset. A listing is a marketing asset. And so you take a listing and sometimes you sell it and you get paid a commission, but sometimes you don't sell it. So but you spend money on it. And you could spend a lot of money on a listing that never sells. So is there benefit to the listing besides the commission you earn when the property sells? And the answer is yes, because a listing is a marketing asset. And so what people do, what agents do, they'll take a listing. As a matter of fact, we mentioned this. We talked a little bit about this. Sometimes people take overpriced listings. They know they're never going to sell it. But the house is on a busy street and they get to put a sign up. And when they put that sign up on the property, people see it and they'll call. And maybe that's not the right house for them, but they become a lead for something else. So a listing is a marketing asset. It helps you develop leads. And whether or not it sells, you can get benefit out of a listing. Now, when you take a listing, you don't say to all the other brokers in town, hey, I just took this listing, bring your signs over. Put your signs up. You say, wait, no, I'm not going to allow other people to come put their signs on my listing. I'm the only one that has the right to put the sign on my listing. I'm the only one that has the right to get leads from my list. Oh, but you have a fiduciary duty. Yeah. But how many agents do you know when they take a listing, say to all the other brokers in town, come put your signs on my listing? And yet, in effect, that's what we have on the internet when brokers have allowed each other to use their listings for display. And when those listings are displayed, potential buyers find out, they become leads. People have created business around selling leads back to agents on their own listings, and we know that that's an issue. So one company and here's another premise.
Yeah, shoot.
Exposure sells real estate. So the more exposure you get, the greater chance you have that you'll get offers, that you'll get more than one offer. Exposure sells real estate. So we want to get it exposed, but we also know a listing is a marketing asset. What do we have to give up for that? And in this marketplace where there's not enough inventory, people have been trying other models. And we've seen some folks go into this idea of, I want to put the listing on my site, and if it doesn't sell, then I'll put it on other brokers' sites.
Yeah.
And there's a great advantage in having the listing on your site first, because the first to publish typically gets some kind of SEO advantage. And so some brokers, and so there's a civil war, we say, it's broken out where you've got sides forming, those people that believe sellers should have choice, and those people that believe that buyers should be able to see everything. Mm-hmm. So now you've got on one side of the fence, you've got Compass that wants to do office exclusives and keep it to themselves unless it And then if it doesn't sell, then they'll expose it to the world. And then you've got the likes of Zillow and EXP and other companies that say, wait a minute, everybody should have the right. Yeah, there are some exceptions. There are some folks that don't want that exposure. We get that. But for the most part, more exposure is better for everybody. We're in that camp. And so you've got these warring camps, and it's actually very personal, where people are attacking one another's business models on national platforms, and because of the interests that each side has. So what NAR did a couple years back, 2018, 2019, they created something called Clear Cooperation Policy.
Yeah.
You got to put your listings into the MLS, and then they've recently augmented that Clear Cooperation Policy, and a lot of people didn't like it, didn't like all the rules around having to put your listing in. So we got all this pushback, and so now we're in this position where people are actually taking sides. Like that summary.
There's an aspect to that premise that we have about the listing as a marketing asset, and that's concerned with the fact of there's a freshness of that. I mean, you want to be the first one to announce that, and what Zillow is doing is moving to a basis where they're talking about, instead of Zillow only, it's Zillow first. You first must do it. And of course, the broker wants the exposure, but at the same time, they'd like to keep the freshness of that before they actually turn it over to, a portal. And so I think there's this concept of the listing broker knows it's an asset, but there's a freshness aspect to it. And Saul mentioned SEO, and there are others.
Yeah, so you've got those brokers that say, we're going to put it on our site, and then if it doesn't sell, so there's been this rearrangement of rules around coming soon. And this concept of public marketing. And so when can you put up a for sale sign, and when can you show the property, and when do the days on market begin to count? And so rules have been changing, and we were looking at our MLS at changing our rules to make it, easier for people to market properties for sale, agents to market properties for sale. And then the NAR, March 25th, dropped something that referred to as delayed marketing exempt listings. And then Zillow came out and said, we think that you need to make your listings distributable and to be able to be displayed to the general public. And if you don't do that, then we, Zillow, are going to ban your listing for the life of that listing at your brokerage firm. Now, that's real interesting, because Zillow now is almost like it become a regulatory body. And agents have to be very, very careful, because we know that while not every agent loves Zillow, a lot of consumers do. And how would you like to be the agent that just really...
Most of the consumers do.
Yeah. How would you like to be the agent that didn't really understand this, and your practice prohibited the seller's home from going on Zillow?
And Zillow is also matching the definition of an MLS. Some people are saying, hey, is Zillow becoming an MLS? Because they have many of the aspects of it. They have rules, they have enforcement, and they have penalties if you don't follow the rules.
Yeah.
So, that's a...
But they're not an MLS, but they're dependent upon MLS, because that's where they get their listing. So Zillow came out and said, first of all, Compass said, we're going to have office exclusives. We're not going to put it in the MLS. And then people started complaining, saying, that's not right. You got to put it in the MLS. And then Zillow came out and said, if you don't put it in the MLS, we're not going to put it on Zillow. People thought, Zillow's kind of like the hero of MLS. But remember, Zillow depends on MLSs. That's where they get their data. They get their listings from the MLS, so they depend on it. So, of course, they're going to stand, I believe, in favor of putting your listings into the MLS, because that's where they get those listings. And so that's a real important piece of this as well. So you have this, again, let's go back to, if you don't put it in the MLS, if you break the Zillow's rule, Zillow's not going to allow your listing to go into Zillow during the term of the listing through that broker. Well, what if you didn't understand this as an agent and you did an office exclusive and it didn't go in the MLS and it broke Zillow's rule? And now Zillow won't put your listing on Zillow. And then when the seller goes to Zillow and they don't find their listing, who are they going to call? Right? They're going to call the listing agent and say, how come my listing is not on Zillow? Well, you remember when we decided to do this off MLS office exclusive? Well, we gave up the right to put it into Zillow when we did that. And so agents got to understand this, and they've got to be able to convey and explain this. Of course, then Homes.com came out and said, hey, if Zillow won't take it, we'll not only take it, we'll boost it.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys think about this? I don't like the fact that Zillow says, well, if you don't put it up, we're never going to put it up, right? I don't like that at all. Because I know that without the MLS, without the data, Zillow doesn't drive the traffic because then they don't have all the listings, right? So that makes sense. I don't like that piece. I also don't like companies like Compass or other companies coming in and saying, well, you know what? We're just not, we're going to hold off on it for an extended period of time. And we're not going to put our properties anywhere unless it's with our own group, right? And here is our group. And you have access to it here. You can take a look at our book or take a look at our special link, whatever it is, but it's not going to go to the general public of agents. I find that a challenge too, because I find that anti-cooperative, right? And I've been trying to figure out in the middle, it's like, where can we stand? Because if I'm thinking of it, it's like, well, I don't agree with either, but I definitely don't agree with hiding the listings. It just seems like anti what you said, which is exposure sells real estate, even though they're saying exposure doesn't sell real estate. Limited exposure sells real estate. That's what they're saying. I have a challenge because where the hell's NAR? Where are they in saying, hey, here are the rules, everybody, let's abide by them. And if you don't, here are the penalties. Where are they?
Well, so along that same line, Howard Hanna, which is a major real estate firm in the middle of the country, they came out and said, we're not following we don't think we need to follow the rules. So we might not follow the rules. And so NAR meets in Washington, D.C. for the legislative meetings. I think it starts Saturday or Sunday of next week. And so I'm looking for something to happen. Now, I got to think NAR has made up its mind on this because, right, we're getting close to where they have to make this public. So I think we're going to see something, because if we don't, you've got a lot of chaos that could result. Now, again, I want to go back to this idea of exposure is what sells property. Anybody who really thinks about this knows the more people you expose a product to, the greater chance you're going to find somebody who wants that product. Particularly something like real estate, which is very unique. Now, Zillow, they did this thing where they came out and they did a study. You know, they want to make it easy for people if you're a listing agent. So I got this from Zillow, but I got to believe it. Maximize exposure, sell faster, and get top dollar. That's Zillow's position. They're saying maximize exposure, sell faster, and get top dollar. And what some of the other companies on the other side that want exclusivity, they're saying, no, we're going to expose it to a limited body of people and we'll get you top dollar. Right? And so Zillow says here, 81% of buyers believe greater visibility increases the likelihood of a bidding war, driving higher prices. I think that's true too, particularly in a limited inventory market. Homes listed on MLSs sell for 17.5% more than those on private networks. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's common sense kind of to me. If you limit the exposure, you're probably not going to get as many offers. And we've got some anecdotal evidence that says people probably have gotten more when it didn't sell in a private network and they exposed it to more people? And what kind of litigation might arise out of where a seller says, you convinced me to put it in a private network, I sold it, I then determined that I sold it for less than I should have, class action litigation maybe. And then Zillow, this is Zillow saying sellers who did not list on the MLS collectively lost over $1 billion in potential sales over the past 2 years. So you've got these warring entities, back to this concept of war within the industry. And John and I know you as well, Tristan, we're firm believers in the concept of mandatory submission. That MLS works because we've all agreed to put all of our listings in the MLS, not some of our listings in the MLS. We've agreed to put all of our listings in, and I'll put all of mine in if you put all of yours in, and that serves everybody and has served everybody for many, many years. And now we've got brokers saying, nah, we don't want to share. But what happens if you don't share? Then I might at some point say, I'm not sharing. And then John might say he's not sharing. And then small brokers are going to have to form their own coalitions and come together and say, we're not sharing with these bigger companies. And again, we're looking at chaos. So I saw a question, Summer asked a question about where's NAR? Well, I'm not sure, but I got to think that it's a topic that's high on the agenda for the meetings in D.C., and I'm anxiously awaiting to see what NAR says. Now, NAR is always kind of walks the fence on some of these issues. And I'm a big supporter of NAR, and I've been a realtor for 48 years or something, ridiculous number of years. And I believe in all of the good things that they do. And at the same time, sometimes they don't do things I agree with. And so I'm waiting to see what happens. But I believe that more people benefit when everybody cooperates and shares the marketplace, as opposed to when we isolate and keep properties off of a general marketplace. And I think that might benefit the companies that do that, but I don't think that benefits consumers in general. And I would personally, my personal opinion, be an advocate for broader distribution. As a matter of fact, our motto used to be, when we built distribution engine for the real estate industry at Point Two, was distribution trumps destination. More important than the destination is the fact that you give it broad distribution.
Oh, yeah.
It's just really quick, John. We have spoken to Compass about their approach, so it's not something that we haven't done. And here's the breakdown, because we summarized that so people can see what it is. They have a three-part marketing phase, so it's not anything that is hidden, and it's very clear, right? The pre-marketing is not on the MLS, and that's the biggest challenge that we have, because once it's not on the MLS, it's anti-cooperative with the rest of the real estate agents. This is only, remember, his job, and there's nothing wrong with it. We live in a capitalist society. His job is to take care of Compass, and he's doing that quite well, right? That's the job. They should be turning positive as a company probably next year, and it's a great thing. But I'm looking at this and saying, how does this serve the industry, and how does it serve all the real estate agents and companies, right? So this is the three-part marketing phase that we summarized from conversations with Compass and from their website. So it's not like we haven't talked to them, but great question.
And Kristen mentioned the reason to keep it off the MLS is for days on market. Well, I can tell you that we've changed our days on market rule. And when you go to active status from coming soon, your days on market starts over again. And any price changes during that coming soon period, those price changes are not public either. So the idea that everywhere in the country, the days on market accumulate, and so that's the reason to not put them in the MLS, that's not a given.
True. And by the way, I love the Compass brand. I just don't agree with their approach on this. That's it. Super easy. Susan asks, what happens when you have a signed listing contract and you add it to an office exclusive before it goes into the MLS for coming soon or active?
Well, it's gonna kind of, now you got to look to CCP. That's not China, but the Clear Cooperation Policy, right? You got to look to that and to the new delayed marketing exempt listing. But there are rules, and the rules say that when you publicly market it, once you begin 24 hours within the public marketing. Well, what constitutes public marketing? That's a great question. You got to look at the criteria that establishes that you've publicly marketed property. It could be something like you put up a sign, or you you allow it to be distributed in an IDX feed. Now, you can't keep it out of a VOW feed. We've been going round and round on that. You really take on a great liability. You try to exclude a listing from a virtual office website feed. Being able to market to other brokers, being able to have open houses, right? There are these things that constitute public marketing. And once you've begun to public market, then the MLS rules say you have to submit it to the listing to the MLS for distribution and display. And so if you've got a contract and you don't submit it to the MLS, then you can't publicly market it, because as soon as you do, you have to put it in the MLS. And if you don't, one of the consequences could be that Zillow won't put it up even after you do put it in the MLS. And that could hurt your seller, and you need to be aware of that.
All right. So we've got the foundation. I want to know what you think happens next, because we've been pretty good at guessing what's happening next. So now that everyone has, I think all the big companies have started to choose sides. We know where they stand. We know what Zillow is going to do next. We're not going to include them in Zillow if you decide to go that route. What happens next? Does NAR step in and say, hey, this is where we stand? Does the Department of Justice come in and say, hey, we're going to side with Compass, we're going to side with Zillow? What does this look like a little bit longer term?
So I think you have to look at the parties involved here and look at the potential outcomes. And so if NAR comes out with rules that are too stringent for some, you might have certain brokers that say, we're not going to follow the rules anymore. We're not going to be a part of the NAR family any longer. We're withdrawing. Basically, Howard Hanna, big company, they've said, we don't like these rules. We might withdraw from NAR. So NAR has to be careful along that line. The Department of Justice and the FTC, we know that they don't like certain aspects of the way real estate is listed and sold in the United States. So based on what NAR does or what brokers do, you might have the Department of Justice and the FTC getting involved. And then you've got the companies that are looking after their own best interest to do what they want to do. But I would also say that a lot of this is market driven. And so it's one thing to keep your listings off the market when everything sells, or keep it out of the MLS when everything sells. But when market times are greater and continue to increase for whatever reason, then people want that broader exposure. And that's going to, I think, that might kind of level the playing field on this. So I think one of the reasons this is such a hot topic is just the market that we've existed in for the last couple of years. Yeah. It'll work itself out in the long run. But I certainly don't want to see us go back to a time when there was no mandatory submission, when you had to go to more than one place to find the properties that were available in the market. I think everybody wins when there's greater transparency and greater exposure. And I want everybody that's got a real estate license to make money, to be able to earn a living, and companies to be able to survive. But we've got to figure out some way to maintain what really is a miracle, and what real estate brokers around the world really kind of hold in high esteem, and that's our ability in this country to create the kind of marketplace that we've been able to create with MLS. You know, real estate's almost a liquid asset. I can put something on the market and I can put cash in my pocket within a very short period of time. It doesn't work that way in the rest of the world. And one of the reasons you can do that is because of what MLS has become. And now we've seen tears. It's ripping apart at the seams. So I see what ultimately you're going to have to find some compromise.
Yeah.
Warring parties.
And I think that's what NAR tried to do with the delayed marketing, where it is mandatory submission to the MLS. But where the problem is with the display aspect of it, because there can be some restrictions on that from a time perspective. And so some MLSs have their own coming soon rules, and there could be some conflict there. Hopefully there will be something resolved in the mid-year meetings next week.
Okay. So we'll have a lot more clarity as to where we're going. And Kristen brings up by the way, Kristen, great questions today. Love it. Thank you for commenting. Another good one. Who regulates and oversees Zillow? In reality, how do they have seemingly free reign to decide to include or exclude listings? Their entire business is selling leads, not homes. I mean, she's right on point.
Well, she is, but you know what? So I'll tell you that who regulates Zillow? The consumer. And so if consumers didn't go to Zillow, then Zillow would have to change what it does. And who puts the listings on Zillow? You, the real estate licensee. You don't have to include Zillow if you don't want to, and I use that generically. You don't have to let your listings go anywhere. Why do you let them go to Zillow? And I'll tell you the reason. Because your seller, if it didn't go to Zillow, your seller would say, how come my listing is not on Zillow? In which case you would work really hard to get that listing on Zillow. So who regulates Zillow? I think it's the consumer. Now remember, Zillow is licensed in all 50 states. So they're also regulated by state laws that to deal with that. And, but it's ultimately the consumer, because it's such a popular place. Agents that could opt out of letting their listings go to Zillow, they don't opt out. And I understand why, because they're sellers that kill them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you've answered that very well, and you're right. When Zillow then stops becoming the place that the consumer visits, like what do they get? A little over 1 billion visits a year?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's only 4 million transactions a year.
That's crazy. And this is why homes.com is coming in and saying, wait a second, we'll show your homes, right?
Yeah.
Not a problem. Which is a very it's a crazy world out there, but it makes sense, right?
But it's the portal wars now. Right? So you got the big portals. You got Realtor.com, and you got Homes.com, and you got Zillow and Trulia. And so there's really are battles for the consumer eyeballs.
Well, that's what Compass is trying to do too. This is why they keep on pushing. We've got this many visitors a month, right? And I mean, Redfin is doing the same thing. This is where all their value came. And that's why Rocket is trying to acquire them, right? And so we look at where we should be going as NAR. So you guys all agree with me on this. I think maybe we should have one giant portal where now we can all send everyone to, put some money behind that and start competing against Zillow and Homes.com.
Won't work. We tried that. That was the original concept of Realtor.com. Now, I can say that because I was on the original Realtor.com team.
I remember you said it won't work.
It won't work. And because
why didn't it work?
Well, so initially we wanted, in my idea, because I was the guy who had to sell the idea of displaying your listings to the world back in 1995. And so my thought was you take the listings, you put them in one spot. You don't give them to anybody else. You put them in one spot, and then everybody will learn to come to that one spot. It's kind of like the Super Bowl. They don't play the Super Bowl on 15 channels. Initially, they play it on one channel, and then they get bazillions of dollars per minute for the advertising. So the initial concept for Realtor.com was owned by 100% by the National Association of Realtors at the time, was we put it in one spot. We don't even put for sale by owners there because all the eyeballs are going to go there. And why would you let it for sale by owner take advantage of all the eyeballs created by all the listings? And then what happened was Microsoft, but it cost, Realtor.com was going to charge $1 a listing a month. That was going to be, would you pay $1 a listing a month? And so the whole business model for Realtor.com was built on $1 a listing a month. And then what happened is when we launched Realtor.com, Microsoft at the same time launched something called Home Advisor, and they offered to do it for free. And when they offered to do it for free, all the brokers said, why would I pay $1 a listing a month when I can do it for free? And so that's when it all split. So I guarantee you, if we said it's one spot, first of all, we'd probably have trouble with the DOJ and the FTC.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have all kinds of problems.
You're a monopoly for sure at this point. Yeah.
And so I just don't see that happening. And I see when somebody else offers it for less money, that there's really no loyalty to a website. It doesn't matter who owns it. Realtor.com, NAR sold us down the river. Well, that's all baloney. It was the directors who were all realtors that said we can't compete with Microsoft. And if somebody does it for free, there's going to be a flood. And think about, what do you pay to put your listing on Zillow?
That's true.
Right? So, and the consumer wouldn't let you do it at this point.
Dude, AI is going to let us search for everything online for free. It's the 5th most visited website in the world now, ChatGPT, right? I can search anything I want. I can make a list of all properties instantly anywhere. I'm assuming on Zillow and on certain websites. So
distribution trumps destination, especially with AI. It's put it everywhere because somebody's going to be able to go out and find it and bring it back to you.
Yeah. Kristen, yeah, I'd love to see Realtor.com too. Zillow did do a great job marketing. They put a lot of money behind creating this. And let me see if I'll let you guys go with this. There's a great interview with Rich Barton and Tim Ferriss. He literally breaks down how they broke into real estate and how they did it. And it happened, I think it was a month ago he did the interview. Rich Barton. It's really good.
And so I remember back when Zillow started, because I flew up to Seattle and had lunch with Lloyd Frank, and because we knew a lot about what was happening at the time, and companies were scraping, and Zillow really came out with, and you'll remember this, is they came out with the Zestimate.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to get eyeballs because people wanted to know what their properties were worth. And they grew it from that simple idea of Zestimates. Now, I saw last couple nights on television, I've seen this new real estate portal. I never heard of them before, called Ownerly. Want to know what your property's worth? So got a copy in the Zillow model. Want to know what your property's worth? Come to ownerly.com. And so I haven't investigated it very deeply yet, but it's like a new idea. It's not a new idea. It's like a new portal that's trying to jump into this portal space.
Well, I mean, dude, Zillow did it right because they used investor money to just buy Google ads and then made Zillow the home search word, right? Have you Zillowed your home, right? Did you get a Zestimate, right? So that's, they did it right. Guys, everyone, thank you so much for jumping in. Zillow made more money from all of us and all of our listings. Susan, I mean, that is very true. They did. They did very, very good.
And they still do, and they still make money from them.
They still make money from us. That's hilarious. Guys, let's see where NAR lands on this. Let's see where in the middle this is going to all end. And let's go from there. John, thanks for being on.
Okay.
Thanks for being on, buddy. Everyone else, thanks for jumping in. Great questions, great interaction. We appreciate all of you.